Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name's Rebecca, I'm 44 years old. I live in Galicia in northern Spain, and I am somebody who used to suffer from multiple sclerosis until I started the carnivore diet a year ago, and I saw a radical upturn in my health, physical and cognitive, and now I live a life symptom-free. And it's been a really interesting journey over the past year, and it's also made me question a lot of things that I used to believe. So I wanted to touch on these topics in this video, these difficult topics of the ethics of being carnivore. And I am both a passionate animal lover and an animal eater. And when I first contemplated the diet, that was something I had to get past. And it's been the upturn in my health that has made me look back at my relationship with animals in a different light since starting the diet. So when I first uploaded a video to YouTube, which was, I think I was a week into the diet when I first vlogged about the experience, I fully expected that if anybody watched it, it was going to be vegans and I was going to come under fire. That actually hasn't happened. I've experienced very little negative feedback on my carnivore journey, and in fact it's been the opposite. I've received a lot of positive feedback and validation, and people who are telling me that they've been inspired to do similar things and or have seen similar effects within their own health journey. So that's actually been a really positive side of carnivore, which like I say, I didn't expect. So that was really wonderful. But I am somebody who likes to debate stuff. I do have a PhD, and when you have a PhD, a part of the deal is that you enter into intellectual discussions with other people, and there's sort of etiquette around how you do that, and it's all very dispassionate, and I was trained in that, so I welcome other opinions. Obviously it's different if you get trolled or you get insulted. That's not the kind of discussion that I enjoy, but you know, part of me is up for it. Part of me is up, and I do rise to it. When I do get trolled, I do rise to it. So I'm not claiming that I've fully embodied the principles of academic debate. However, I am trained in that regard, and it's not something I would shy away from. And so I kind of wandered into a vegan forum a few days ago, and then I did get some backlash. So it's just given me food for thought. And I'm sympathetic to a vegan position, being an animal lover. It's not that I don't understand that by being a meat eater, animals have to die, and nobody wants to die. You know, it's awkward, it is awkward. However, it's also, I believe, natural, and this is the crux of it for me, and this is what I wanted to discuss. So this one vegan that as I say, I wondered, and the debate started, it actually, the video that inspired me to go and debate things with vegans was the Sean Baker interview with a vegan, or debate with a vegan, although you're hard pushed to call it a debate, because really it's just a militant vegan. That is literally her name. She calls herself the militant vegan, screaming at him for about an hour, and she absolutely loses the debate simply on the basis that she loses control and just keeps interrupting him and keeps screaming at him, and he's there perfectly respectful, perfectly calm, and at some point he says, okay, sure you win, or you know, sure, I'm contradictory, that's fine, you and on that basis she has said that she has won the debate. But all the comments underneath from carnivores and vegan alike are absolutely damning to her, because her arguments weren't even coherent, they were just angry, and she doesn't do any favours for vegans and their position by the approach that she takes. I was just intrigued, who is this girl? And I clicked on her YouTube channel and saw a few other. She was in the streets, interviewing people in the streets and screaming at random strangers in the streets. So that was the video. I commented on that video saying that, you know, she didn't persuade anybody. She just screamed in their faces that they were wrong. And I got some comments back. So that's where the debate started. It was just a couple of comments. Nobody insulted me or I didn't even say I was carnivore, actually. I just said that I didn't think the way that she approached it was mature or evolved in any way. And anyway, but the debate, the arguments that came back at me from, I had 2 people responding to my comment. The arguments coming back at me were were very sort of rooted in rationalism. So I'll read out one comment I got. The point of veganism is to reduce suffering as much as practicable. Just because a vegan diet causes some harm isn't a justification for you to cause the maximum amount of harm. Totally fallacious logic. So, first of all, that wasn't a direct response to what I had said, because I hadn't tried to justify causing the maximum amount of harm to animals. In fact, I didn't even state that I was carnivore or what my ethics were. This person was just assuming that I was carnivore. The only point I made to the vegans was that the latest research, the latest scientific research, points to plant sentience. So, you know, that plants are sentient in a plant-specific way, but that is very real and sophisticated. So it kind of complicates things if you're a vegan, because this particular person who was arguing with me was trying to tell me that plants were like computers. And I was arguing back saying, well, look, if I leave my computer alone for a week, it doesn't wilt and die. Plants are alive. You can't call them computers. They're definitely alive. They thrive and they suffer and they grow, and we didn't invent them, and we're in no position to say what their experience is. So, you know, maybe plants suffer just as much as animals do when we pull them out of the ground. So I think that this is the crux of it for me. It's this, applying this type of logic falls down, because you could apply it the other way. You know, applying the type of logic where you say carnivores are murderers because animals are just like humans and therefore we have no right to kill and eat them. If we can extrapolate back the other way and say, well, plants are not that far away from, I don't know, mushrooms, which are not that far away from animals, so we shouldn't kill and eat them either. Then there's the argument, no, they don't have a central nervous system, but that's just that's anthropomorphizing other types of life and what their experience is. They don't have to be, you know, you wander into problematic territory really quickly. And actually, I feel like one of the issues is applying rational thought to these debates, because when I was studying my PhD, I was critiquing rationalist forms of thought. So what I mean by that is, during the Enlightenment, rationalism became the prevalent paradigm of thought in Western society, and that's when religion started to lose its power over the masses. So that was an important part of human society developing, and I'm not for one second suggesting that we should discard rationalism. However, I think that we've reached a point where, perhaps because of the internet, or perhaps just because enough time has passed, where it's quite clear that rationalism doesn't speak to all dimensions of the human experience. It's a limited framework of thought. Like I say, it doesn't mean that it has to be rejected, but I think it should be applied in certain circumstances, and there's other circumstances in which rationalism falls down. And I think that that's the case in this debate. I think that at the end of the day, rationalism takes you away, it can take you away from the essence of being human. Rationalism, which is often conflated with what's good and moral, which is definitely fallacious, because, you know, you could argue that Hitler was very rational in his approach to the Holocaust, but no one would argue that that was moral or good. But rational thought processes were applied to that, you know, to the execution of the Holocaust. It was very industrial and organized, and there was a certain logic in Hitler's mind, which I profoundly disagree with, as I'm sure all of you watching also do. But it was logical to Hitler, and very cold-minded rationalism is how the Holocaust was carried out. So I don't think that carnivores are murderers. I don't think that carnivores are necessarily caring less about animals or about their welfare. I think that there are plenty of ethical choices carnivores can make in order to reduce the amount of harm that animals experience because we use them for nutrition. But rationally, you can apply a rational argument to all different sides of the debate. You can extrapolate out, and what I'm saying here is, and it's a really difficult topic actually. It's probably something that's better put into writing than into a short YouTube video. It's like an essay, a thesis, But I guess it's just sort of budding inside me. But the thing is, for me, the crux of this issue isn't about what's rational. It's about what's most instinctual to human life. So we can observe that in nature, animals eat other animals, and nature is also given a value judgment of being better than what's not natural. So if rational is good and natural is good, sometimes they go against each other. Sometimes you've got these two forces pulling in different directions. What is logical or rational and what is natural and instinct based. So we can't usefully apply rational arguments to what our bodies need, to the morality that we've constructed around us, where we don't harm anything. I think that comes a point where we have to accept that we have to harm things in order to be alive, in order to be sustained, in order to have the right nutrition. And this is what the carnivore diet has done for me. It's caused me to come face to face with the fact that I inhabit a body on the planet Earth. I don't know why. I just got born and I'm here. I don't remember what was going on before I was born. I don't know what will happen after I've died. All I know is I'm here on this earth in this dimension. And in this dimension, I am a physical, incarnated being that requires sustenance. If you take veganism through to its logical conclusion, where we're minimizing harm, you would end up as a breatharian, which some people claim is possible. I have my doubts. Everything that we eat has once been alive. We don't eat plastic, we don't eat stone, we don't eat metal. What we eat has always been alive first. That doesn't mean we have to eat everything that is alive, because, for example, I think most people watching this would agree that we don't eat other human beings, and many people watching this would agree that it's not desirable to eat dogs, for example, because of our close relationship with them. So there's definitely murky territory, and you can't apply cold rationalism or extrapolate out too far. At the end of the day, we have our bodies to respect. And this militant vegan was hardly embodying rationalism herself, because she was in a blind rage and just throwing insults out at Sean Baker. That's not rational either. And, there's other elements of the human experience. So all we know is we're here. We're here, we have bodies. And there's other dimensions of the human experience which don't fit into rationalism. So, for example, creativity, being in the flow state, that's not a rational state. Instincts, intuition, the quantum level, there's nothing rational about quantum science. It flies in the face of all things that we would consider rational. So we know that it's only a limited framework of thought. We know that when we're arguing with vegans, we're not going to get anywhere, because nobody's arguing as a carnivore, I don't think, that we want to justify causing the maximum amount of harm. That doesn't make any sense. As carnivores, often I think there's a deeper appreciation of animals because they are our sustenance. We respect them as that, and so we would seek to make ethical choices within that and reduce harm as much as possible, which is all vegans are doing, because they're not reducing harm to plants, which could well have sentience of a type we don't understand. So we're all doing the same thing. We're wanting to reduce harm. We're wanting to, I think most carnivores, at least the ones that comment on my channel, I would be against, large-scale factory farming or additives added to our meat, or animals being kept in horrible conditions. Nobody wants that. I think carnivores and vegans generally are very mindful of those things because they're mindful of what they eat. It's not really fair to argue that carnivores are trying to inflict the maximum amount of harm. That's not what's going on at all. That in itself is fallacious logic. You know, I've said many times that if a lion ate me, I wouldn't be very happy about it. I would struggle with the situation. But I would never say that that lion had committed a crime or was a complete asshole for doing that. I wouldn't say that because I'd be dead, but also because it hasn't done anything that goes against its nature. It can't be held to account for something that isn't a fundamental part of its nature. And when we give meat to dogs, we can see how they thrive. If a dog is raised on a pure meat diet, it's going to be absolutely in tip-top condition. It's what it wants. You can see that that's exactly what it wants. It's salivating over that, and it's going to be in the best health. And I've observed that in my own body since starting the carnivore diet, and many other people have testified to the same. So it is just confronting us with something that's very difficult, which is that we eat things that were once alive, and those things often have an evolved central nervous system, and all we can do is treat them well when they're alive and give them the quickest, cleanest death possible, and with gratitude and respect towards that animal for being part of the food chain that we're part of too. So yeah, I think it's this, I'm trying to pick this all apart, but really it's something that is, you know, like I say, it's something that really I'd find easier to put into writing so that I could organise my thoughts, structure it better. So anyway, I looked into different religious traditions to see what they have to say on the matter, because actually I had my friends come to visit last week and they're Muslim, which is quite interesting. And we went to a halal meat shop in Santiago de Compostela, which is an hour away, city an hour away from here. We just had a lot of discussions about halal meat and what that's all about. So I know halal meat is completely demonized. I wonder what you guys think as carnivores, because the reason it's demonized is because it's seen as inhumane. But actually, if you go back to 600 AD when halal meat came about at the inception of Islam, the whole point of it was to reduce animal suffering, because now there were parameters around how that animal should be treated and how that animal should be killed. So eating meat in Islam is permissible, but actually the Prophet Muhammad advised eating small amounts of meat. So it's permissible and even seen as beneficial, but he didn't eat meat every single day, and he said that the best way to slaughter an animal is to treat it well when it's alive, give it a good life, and then the death should be cutting the throat, because the reason being that immediately severs the neurons, I suppose, in the brain. That immediately means that the animal's not sentient anymore, and then hang it upside down and drain it of blood, because that's the cleanest way to do it. And this was an improvement on what was cultural practices that were before that. So it's more like acknowledging, yes, this animal is going to die because we're going to eat it. We're not going to kill animals for any other reason, just for sport, nothing like that. No. We're respecting this animal. We're praying when we're killing it. We're giving it gratitude and respect, and we're killing it in the quickest manner possible, and then the cleanest manner possible by draining it. So now the difference is you can stun animals before you kill them, which wasn't available at that time. So this at the time was an improvement. And so I don't consider that barbaric. I consider that realist about the way that the fact that and also in Islam, fasting is highly encouraged. So the Prophet Muhammad didn't actually eat very much at all. He was in autophagy. Is that how you pronounce it? I'm not sure. He was fasting all the time. I think every Monday and every Thursday he fasted. So it's really interesting to look back on religious traditions and how they deal with this awkward issue. So I did do like a little bit of research on it. So what I looked at was both spiritual arguments for eating meat and spiritual arguments against eating plants. That's what I looked into, to compare the positions in different religions. And I found that with Islam it's definitely permissible to eat meat. Same in Judaism, same in Christianity. but there are dietary laws around humane slaughter and proper consumption. It's like a concession to human nature to be conducted mindfully in Christianity, in Judaism, and in Islam. So all the Abrahamic religions, all the Semitic religions agree on that, although they may have differences, minor differences in practice. And I think that's super interesting. Like, that's, yeah, even in the Old Testament, it's actually said that God tells Noah, every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. So that's in the Bible. And then, of course, Jesus and the fishes, all the fish that he provided, the miracle of all the fishes. So, you know, we can see there that in religion, which is deeply moral, ethical, it's allowed. So I'm in Europe, and in Europe, religion is often dismissed, but often people give more credence to like Buddhism instead of the Abrahamic religions, which have been really quite demonized, I would say, in mainstream contemporary culture. They're mocked and not taken seriously. I know it's different in America, and most of my viewers are in America, so do tell me what you guys think. The other biggest religions, apart from Islam, Judaism and Christianity, are Hinduism and Buddhism, which are famously non-violent. Hindus are mostly vegetarian. But what I found was they're not exclusively vegetarian. That in Hinduism, and I've had to look at my notes here, there are some Hindu sects and interpretations which accept the eating of meat under specific conditions. So the warrior class, I don't know how to pronounce this, the Kshatriyas, the warrior class of Hinduism traditionally ate meat as part of their duty and their role. And that was for them to physically remain strong in battle. So sometimes as well, meat offerings are given to Hindu deities. So in that context, the consumption of meat is actually considered sacred. And then in Buddhism, although, as I'm sure everybody knows, the principles of compassion and non-violence are deeply entrenched, certain schools of Buddhism do allow the consumption of meat. And that's especially when it isn't specifically killed for the purpose of eating it. So when it's already dead. And so the practice would be non-attachment to that rather than abstinence. And some traditions basically acknowledge our current state of incarnation by arguing that some enlightened beings can transcend the karmic consequences of eating meat. So I guess that's an acknowledgement that we're not there yet. We haven't reached nirvana, or like maybe some individuals reach nirvana, but the rest of us haven't. And in those conditions, we're stuck in the karma of this world where we eat meat, and maybe it's possible to transcend that and we don't need that anymore. But right now, I would argue that the human race has got a long way to go before it reaches nirvana. And until such a thing happens, it's just something that is part of our dimension. And there are some sort of spiritualist traditions which actually advocate eating meat as a way of connecting with our ancestors, the ancient wisdom of our hunter-gatherer forebears, you know, the way that they lived. Because eating meat has sustained human evolution, body and brain. You know, and sometimes meat can be seen as sort of a dense and grounding food, which helps to root the spiritual experience within the body. So there's some really profound spiritual traditions which put parameters around it and emphasize gratitude and responsibility, but also emphasize the fact that our physical strength and our physical development depends on the consumption of meat. The spiritual arguments for eating meat tend to center around the natural order, divine provision, gratitude and balance. So it's the importance of intention, respect and ethical choices in the act of consuming meat. That speaks to me much more than some rational argument that we're doing something wrong by following our nature. I would argue that is a fallacy, because you're ignoring the fact that not only do we have to adhere to rational arguments, we also have to be mindful of our health, and if it's the proper human food, then we need it. I certainly needed it. I didn't know it, but I now know it. So I don't really know what I can do other than be grateful that I've discovered this and seek to step away from bad practices around meat and consumerism and, you know, mass farming practices, which were not the case at the time of our ancestors. So, and then on the flip side, you've got religious traditions that consider all life sacred, like in Jainism it's like that, and in animism, lots of indigenous traditions believe that everything's imbued with the spirit, and all harm should be avoided to everything that in any way has an expression of the life force. As far as I understand it, Jains refrain from eating root vegetables because harvesting them kills the entire plant. And often the food that's consumed is fruit that's already dropped from the trees, so that you're not committing an act of violence from taking the fruit from the trees, because it creates negative karma to do that. So I respect that. That's great if that works for you. I do think that all vegans, by their own logic, should have to follow that path and end up there, not picking fruit off the trees. If you're going to extend rationalism, if you're going to root your processes in logical thought processes, Jainism makes the most sense. But it also means you're going to be very hungry. And that's not very logical either, because then how are you going to live your best life? How are you going to care for your children? How are you going to do anything if you are starving hungry and there's no fruit trees around because you live in a city? What are you going to do? Yeah, so it's very difficult territory, and I'm not seeking to persuade anybody of a particular view here. I'm just thinking it through myself I suppose I'm starting to think it through on a deeper level and just getting the conversation going. But to me, rational / ethical / spiritual arguments are on a continuum, and at some point you have to leave rationalism behind, because there's deeper levels to our experience, whether that's transcendental or rooted in our DNA. Rational debates about meat consumption aren't going to change the fact that our bodies need the right nutrition, and it's a bit of a stretch to start calling carnivores murderers or, you know, supporting slavery. To be accused of murder is a very serious thing. So it's different, because the intention is not to end somebody's life because out of malice. It's, I would argue, an uncomfortable reality that we are in a certain karmic dimension. We are incarnated in a certain frequency of being, and we see all around us that the natural world is violent to other parts of the natural world, and that is natural. So that's where I'm at, and I think that we're still left with the responsibility to make ethical choices within that. Those choices are available to us, and I think that what's most important is extending that respect to our fellow human beings as well, if they sit somewhere different on that spectrum of ethical behaviour and ethical choices, as long as the intention is there, not to cause harm for harm's sake. So, I mean, I'm obviously going to draw the conclusion that I'm not a murderer for being carnivore. That is truly how I feel. I don't intend to harm any animals. I love animals. And what I found is, as a carnivore, my love for animals has deepened and grown, and my respect for them and my desire to stop them from suffering needlessly has also grown. I'm completely against blood sports. I don't like hunters, for example. I lived on the mountain for 4 years, and the hunters everywhere. But even hunters, there's a need for them when there needs to be a cull. So it's not even as black and white as hunting is wrong. You know, but the reason I disagreed with it is because often you would see a deer, they'd taken the antlers away but left the body. They weren't even killing it for food. So I took exception to that. But there are arguments that, you know, hunters are needed, you know, and that is a reality. So we're all juggling contradictory elements of reality. We're all on this earth trying to figure it out. Why are we here and how best can we live? What I discovered was that I can live best when my diet is exclusively meat. I was once struggling with a disability and cognitive decline, and now I'm not. And I am so thankful for the animals for helping me to get past that. Like I say, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. What I am trying to do is introduce a more thoughtful discussion about these issues, a deeper level discussion about these issues, because it's really very important. If it is the right human food, we should be allowed to eat it without being called murderers. So that's all I would want. I would want to have my right to choose what I want to eat and be well and be healthy. Yeah, it's just interesting. It's just interesting. Like, all of life is a mystery, but some things are instinctual, and we come programmed with those instincts, and that instinct is there towards meat, and that means that we have to confront a difficult truth. I think a lot of vegans are not going to be very happy about the fact that some of the latest research is pointing to plant sentience. It's going to throw their arguments off. These days we seem to be revisiting some of the most basic biological facts and turning them on their heads. I don't know why that's happening. It's happening with sex and gender just as much as it is with what food we should be eating. Like, these very, very fundamental things about being human are being called into question, and not just called into question, but policed. So I have an issue with that, and I'm always going to try and seek the most ethical way to eat meat because I love animals. And one of the things that I've done is bought some land so I can raise my own animals, and I can make sure that they're not given lots of extra hormones or what have you, and that they're fed the right food, and that they're kept in good conditions, and that when it does come to the moment that they're slaughtered, it's done in the quickest and most ethical way possible. And I really do feel like that's the best I can do as a human, because as a human I want to eat what's going to make me feel well, and therefore be able to reach my full potential and put more good out into the world, rather than suffering and being hungry and being disabled and really not doing much to contribute to the world at all, except whinging all the time about how lonely and ill I am. I'm not doing that anymore. Not that anyone was listening anyway, but I'm putting something positive out there, which is all we can hope to do. And I think I'll just leave it there, because I don't think I have like the final thing that's going to resolve all the debates. I know it's not. This debate's going to go on, but that's kind of where I'm at with it, and I'd just be really interested to see what you guys think. So anyway, it's nice to see you guys. Not that I can see you, but nice to chat to you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.